Look, everybody, it's a live stream. We are so live right now. We are just getting things going. If you're watching this in the replay, you can fast forward about 9.5 minutes or so, and we will get this thing underway. In the meantime, I am trying to get my act together. I've got a number of things that I've already done before you saw me here live. That's good. We can turn this down. Already updated the website. Let's do a camera check. It's me. Hi. Hi, how you doing? I need to turn this on so that I can test the other thing. Camera 3, camera 4. Camera 1 with the thing, camera 1 without the thing. High tech, people. It's where we are. It's what we're doing. All right, let's tell the chat room that we're live. Network Plus study group is at professormesser.com/live. And there we go. Now, the real question is, are people going to show up? If you're watching on YouTube, you may want to go over to professormesser.com/live, because that is where I see the chat. It's where the chat is. It's where if you're chatting. I should probably work on a lower third that would say that during the pre-show. What a fabulous idea. Not going to do it right now. I'm still trying to make sure I got all my ducks in a row. I think we do. This is a kind of a surprise study group, but not really. It was 2 weeks ago. We had to cancel or postpone the Network Plus study group until now. So this was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago. And then on the Sunday, we usually do these on Wednesdays. The Sunday before, we had a tropical storm come through, took out power, took out internet. And I called it at that time and said, you know, if we're still rebuilding the internet links tomorrow, Monday or Tuesday, and it turns out I got internet back on Tuesday. So it was I wasn't quite sure Wednesday was really the most reliable day for internet access, having been up and running now 4 days. It turns out it was probably okay. Although I didn't do any checks during that time, so I don't know. I don't know how it worked out. But in any case, we are going to do the same study group, which was all ready to go. It was already built. The questions were there. Everything was set up. And then I canceled it. I postponed it, rather. So right now, so we're going to get, all the content is still, of course, never been seen before. And this is a live event, so I really am live. This didn't happen 2 weeks ago. Today really is September the 27th of 2017. I don't have a newspaper to show you. That's just how it goes. Go to the front page of a website, I guess. How are things going outside? How did things fare outside? Well, let's have a look at the bird feeder and see how things fared. We should be able to find out. Well, it's just fine. The tropical storm that came by was really just a tropical storm at that point. So it's probably 60, 70 mile an hour winds. The eye wall came right over the studio. So we got, you know, the worst part of what it was at that point. The rest of Florida was pretty badly hit, but not here. There was really, you know, leaves, there was some branches down. Not really a lot of trees down, but a lot of power went down. And losing internet for 2 days, which was just a treat. If you're watching this on YouTube again, chat room is at professormesser.com/live. Oh, no, it isn't. That's the one thing I haven't done yet. You don't see a chat there. You're wondering, where's the chat? It was supposed to be on the live page, but it's not on the live page. I know, because I didn't turn it on. So I have to delete some things. I have to do an update just for the kick of things. I think that is supposed to update the cache, but I'm going to update it anyway. We're going to purge that cache. I'm going to wipe that cache right out of my hair. So if you are on the live page, you can go to professormesser.com/live, do a refresh, and the chat will show up at the bottom of the page. See how that works? You're wondering, he says there's a chat there. There's not a chat there. You can, of course, if you are already registered, you can go to the list of available chat rooms. We'll list it out too if you wanted to do it separately. So welcome. See, now people are talking to me. I'm wondering, why is it so quiet? Nobody's really chatting today. There's not much going on. And of course, without a chat, you can't tell me that you're not in the chat. See how that works? We've got another 5 minutes or so. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. 3.5, really. This thing's going to happen already. It's going to get going right now. Everything ready to go here? I think so. We've got our mouse. We got our things here ready. That's set up. We've got recording going here. We've got recording going there. It's live and being recorded on the internet. It's all good. What time will we finish? I don't know. The Q&A lasts for an hour, and then we just open up the phone lines. We'll just talk. Do I prefer Apple over Android? For my mobile devices, I prefer Apple over Android. I just hate to have use a phone that I have to keep rebooting. That's really the only reason. If Android was more stable, I'd use Android. Well, maybe not. I'd probably still use Apple. But there are too many downsides to Android for me. I don't have time to make my phone work. I just want it to work. I should not have to make it do anything. Let's see, 2 minutes. 2 minutes. We're on the faster delay. There's not as much of a delay as there has been previously. YouTube did an update to their live streaming service, and now there is hardly any delay. I think we're talking about a 5 to 10 second delay now, which is not very much. It used to be longer. It used to be twice that, 20 seconds or so. So this is great that I can ask questions and we can start getting that up immediately. Am I using TriCaster for multiple feeds? Well, the TriCaster is certainly where all the cameras are. So yes, all the switching of me between all these cameras is the TriCaster doing all of that. So for sure, which is why I use it. It's fantastic. Apple doesn't play nice with anyone else. Apple, all of their Android, Apple, and Microsoft's mobile operating systems work fine with everything because they have to. Well, good. Got Network Plus coming up. I'm glad we were able to squeeze this one in at the end of the month and out of order. End of the month. I'm not going to get a week-long gap like I usually do at the end of the month. So that's just how it goes. That's just how it's going to go. So we're going to do another 3 weeks straight after this, another 3 study groups and every Wednesday. No gaps. So we're just keeping it going. Boom, 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 boom. Really should do that anyway. Shouldn't we just do something every Wednesday? Whatever it is. Probably. I got a BlackBerry. You can't see it. It is behind me. Can you see it? No, it's up against. I've got a BlackBerry back there on those shelves back there. Can't see it though. Where is it? Where did I put it? I don't know. There's actually an iPack back there as well. That works. I have power for it. It actually boots. I got like that. All right, it's time for a study group, everyone. Let's push a button. Let's do this. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2017 Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group from the Messer Studios World Headquarters in Tallahassee, Florida. I am your host, James Messer, for this next hour of interactive Q&A here on the internet in this live stream. Thank you for joining me. Thanks, chat room. We got chat before we got started here. Got everybody talking about all kinds of different things. If you tuned in for this live event 2 weeks ago and noticed that we didn't have one, that's because we had a tropical storm come through that took out power and it took out internet. So we ended up having to push this another couple weeks. No damage here, no permanent issues to deal with. We had some branches down and that was about it. Here in the northern part of Florida, we weren't hit too badly. In the southern part of Florida, in the Florida Keys, and down the southern part of Florida, they were hit pretty badly. So we were pretty lucky how we got out of that one. So we're now here 2 weeks later. I have exactly the same content, though. It was already written for you. It was already ready to go. And so I'm going to give everything that I had ready to go now straight to you. And we'll go through all of this content that's just been sitting around waiting for you to show up. Thanks for joining us. This is something I do every month. I do a Network Plus study group. I also do an A Plus study group and a Security Plus study group. You can always check the calendar on my website for when the next live event will be. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter/Facebook/YouTube. Just put a slash and the name of that particular site, and you will find me on there. Also, don't forget about the voucher discounts available. If you're planning to take your exam, don't pay full price. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. There's a 10% off voucher right there for any CompTIA exam. So don't forget that either. That'd be something nice to have too, be able to work through those. Whenever I start looking at how I'm going to do things on the next study group, this is really what I start looking at. Is I go through every single one of my videos. I go through all of my course notes. I try to find something in almost every set of videos that are there. So one of the things you can do is you can watch every single one of my videos online as well. They're all available absolutely free every minute of every video. It's kind of weird how that works. I also have offline versions. Some people like to purchase offline versions from me. I also provide MP3 versions. Those are available as well. And my course notes are out there as well. You can learn about all of this at professormesser.com/getnet+. I've also got some questions available on here as well. They're professormesser.com/popquiz. There's A+ questions, Security Plus questions, and Network Plus questions. So if you wanted to take yourself through a 20-question Q&A and see how well you know, these are taken from previous study groups. So it's questions that I have all written and worked specifically on being able to work through. So maybe that's something you can, of course, have a look through all of those pieces. So let's have a look at what we have on podcasts as well. This is something whenever I look at people asking me, I want to watch the study group, or I can't watch the study group replay. I'm in my car. I would like to listen to audio. There is professormesser.com/podcasts where I take all of these, and I, of course, am able to make an audio version, and the podcast is available. So use whatever podcasting app you like to use to be able to pull those down and be able to work through those. Today, we're going to be doing live Q&A. This is something you can really only do when you're live. If you're watching this on a replay, this isn't something you're able to do. If you follow these links on the replay and you're trying to see the interactive Q&A, there isn't any. You have to be here live to do this. The easiest way to do this is to go to professormesser.com/QA. Some of you have also the app that is on your mobile device. If you have that, you'll want to go to the room name Professor Messer. If you have the Socrative student app, it's listed right there on the screen for the Socrative student app. You can go out there and go to Professor Messer is the name of that room. Well, we're going to go do a question. We're going to look at a question that I've got all ready to go. If you see a question on your screen, doesn't seem like it's Network Plus related, because it isn't. But if you get to that question, you'll know you're in the right place. We'll look at that question in just a moment. The Network Plus exam is one that's been out since February 28th, 2015. We expect there'll be an update sometime around the beginning of 2018. So you've got plenty of time, because even if they release a new version of the exam, they still keep the old versions in place for months and months afterwards. So I fully expect that this time next year in 2018, you will probably still be able to take the N10006 exam, the one that we're going to talk about now. Never wait for a new set of questions to come out. Whether you pass this exam or whether you pass a newer set of questions, you get exactly the same certifications. So I don't know why people wait to take a new set of questions that is brand new, that nobody has any information on, to simply earn the exact same certification. You should use as many resources as you have available. You should set yourself up for the best possible success. And currently, that would be to take the N10006 exam. CompTIA hasn't provided any formal announcements of when things will be changing. These are estimates, but I think they'll be pretty close to that. So if you did go to Socrative or you went to professormesser.com/QA, you saw a question on the screen, and the question was, about half of all peanuts in the United States are grown within 100 miles of what city? Well, that's a really good question, isn't it? It has nothing to do with Security Plus, Network Plus, or A Plus, or even technology in general. But this is one where we're testing this out. We're going to see how well you do with using this technology. You should see on your screen, Vidalia, Georgia is there, Locust Ridge, Tennessee, Dothan, Alabama, Monticello, Florida, and Denmark, South Carolina. Those are 5 cities in the United States. Those are real cities in the United States. And the real question is about peanuts that are grown in the United States. So we can see on our list interactively, I get to see the folks that are showing me. Vidalia is coming in at 45%. There is a tie for second at 18% between Locust Ridge, Tennessee, and Dothan, Alabama. 12% of the folks said Monticello, Florida, and 7% said Denmark, South Carolina. So if you think you know the answer, that's where you go, is professormesser.com/QA. If you're on Socrative, the room name is Professor Messer, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or you won't see that question. So if you do see that question, if you are in the chat room and you can see that there, you know that, well, almost half of us chose Vidalia, Georgia. Vidalia. Well, what is it then? Interestingly enough, not Vidalia, Georgia. It is about half of the peanuts in the United States grown are grown just about 100 miles, within 100 miles of Dothan, Alabama. Interestingly enough, Alabama, and Dothan's a great city as well. Vidalia, Georgia, well known for the Vidalia onions. If you find a Vidalia onion, Vidalia, as we say here, a Vidalia onion in your grocery store, it can only be called a Vidalia onion if it's from Vidalia, Georgia. You cannot get that onion with that name from anywhere else in the world. Sort of like champagne. You know, something from Champagne is only from that particular area of France. So it's one of those things. The reason I mention this is already lost to us from 2 weeks ago. As I mentioned, we delayed this broadcast for 2 weeks because of the tropical storm that came through. This was originally set to be broadcast on September the 13th, which, interestingly enough, was National Peanut Day, and we missed it. Can you believe that we didn't even have a chance to celebrate? But go ahead and set your calendar right now for September the 13th of next year, and we'll all meet back again and talk about National Peanut Day. No, we won't. But it's a nice thought, isn't it? We could pretend that we're going to do that, but we're not really. Let's jump into some Network Plus questions. I think we've got the idea of how all of this works now. We've got questions in front of us. For those of you that have taken the Network Plus exam before, you or any of the CompTIA exams, the A+, the Network Plus, Security Plus, you know that the first questions that pop up on the exam are what CompTIA calls performance-based questions, which in the CompTIA definition of that is really any type of question that is not a multiple choice. So it could be a fill in the blank, it could be a matching question, it could be one where you have to connect lines between things that are relations with each other, put things in order from highest to lowest or lowest to highest. It could be a number of different things. You could be put at a command line and asked to perform a particular function. So these performance-based questions can take many, many different forms. So what I have in our study group now is the first question we do is a performance-based question. So I have one for you that is a performance-based question, and here it is. I've got a set of port numbers. In fact, there's only 4 port numbers here: UDP 161, TCP 143, TCP 5060, and TCP 22. But I have 7 different descriptions that are listed here. So obviously we're not going to match every description here. So you're not going to be able to match up. We're only looking for 4. If you think they match up perfectly right now, it would be 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D, and you're done. So there's going to be 3 descriptions you're not going to use. Here's what the descriptions are for those of you listening on the podcast. For those 4 port numbers, we have A, call for pizza delivery. B is browse to an encrypted web server. C is receive an email message. D is log in to a Linux server. E is automatically obtain an IP address. F is print from a Windows workstation. And G is gather router statistics. So what I'm looking for you to tell me in this is you can just put the numbers and the letters. So if you think it's 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, that's what you would put into the fill in the blank that's right there, because I don't have a way for you to match it up on the Socrative app. Probably if this was on an exam, you would draw lines between them. You'd have it on the screen and you'd be able to drag a line across or put them next to each other. There's some other type of drag and drop, but we don't have a drag and drop in Socrative. So look at those 4 port numbers and notice I'm not asking you what those 4 port numbers are. This is very common on the CompTIA exams. They're not very big on definitions. You should already know what the definitions are. They're going to give you information and then ask how you would use that, not what it stands for, not what the definition is for these. In the chat room, people are also talking about another strategy I've mentioned before, which is a lot of the performance-based questions are very involved. And when you're first sitting down for the exam, it can be very disorienting. There's a lot of adrenaline. You hear a buzzing noise in your ear. You're not really able to read and comprehend things very well. I often recommend that people jump over all of the performance-based questions. You can skip to any part of the exam you want at any time with the CompTIA exams. Not all certification exams are like this, but CompTIAs are, where you can jump around to any question you'd like. I say just jump over all the performance-based questions, go right to the multiple choice, and get through all the multiple choice first. And for me, that tends to jog things in my memory, and I can now go back to the performance-based questions, and things that I saw in a previous multiple choice question might help me answer one of the performance-based questions too. You've often seen that where you've gotten halfway through the exam and you see a question and a previous question actually reminded you of the answer of this question. So it's very common for you to run into. So we're getting a number of answers through. I can't show you all of them as we're coming through. Let's see if I can see. A lot of you are doing pretty good with these. Oh, some of you are spot on with these. Some of you are not quite sure. Exactly. Some of you are like, okay, 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D. How about that? You've just decided not even going to try. One on the exam, CompTIA has said that on very rare occasions, the performance-based questions will give a partial credit. On rare occasions, there will be partial credit, not usually. So that's one of those problems you'll run into, is you're never quite sure exactly what kind of credit you're going to get. So take a guess at the very least with any of the questions. You might hit it and they might give you partial. You'll never really know for sure. Not even when it's over, you will know for sure. So let's see the answer to this. How did we do with this one? Another comment I will make is do not answer in the chat room. We want to have everybody get a chance to be able to answer these. And you can always put it in the professormesser.com/QA. That's the best place to go to be able to do that. Let's see how we did. Let's spin this around, and there it is. So the first port number was UDP 161, and that matches to G, gather router statistics, because that is the port that is most commonly associated with SNMP, the Simple Network Management Protocol. The second port number, TCP 143, you should know immediately, oh, that's IMAP, specifically IMAP 4, which is the messaging protocol that you would use to receive an email message. The third port number is TCP 5060, and TCP 5060 is most associated with the Session Initialization Protocol, or SIP, that we use for voice over IP. So of course we're going to use voice over IP to call for a pizza delivery. We've also got TCP port 22. That was the last one on our list. TCP port 22 is most often associated with Secure Shell, SSH, and we would use secure shell to log in, D, log into a Linux server. So it's 1G, 2C, 3A, and 4D. The three descriptions we did not use are TCP 443. That's one. We've also did not use TCP 443 is HTTPS. You would use that to browse to an encrypted web server. UDP 67 and UDP 68 are DHCP. That's automatically obtain an IP address. And TCP 445 is commonly associated with SMB, that is F print from a Windows workstation. So that's where we start to get into how do all of these things fit together? How does all of this work? We should know what they are. We should know what they're associated with. We should know how to use them. So we've got a few options available with those. Hopefully you were able to get the 1G, 2C, 3A, and 4D and put those all together. Be one good one to use for this. The session initialization protocol is commonly done over TCP. The actual communication of the real-time protocols are all done over UDP. So it's another, but you can of course do them over any, but commonly that's what we would see as TCP is used for SIP. Let's jump to out of the performance-based questions, and let's do one that is more multiple choice. I've got a multiple choice one here. And the multiple choice, now we're sort of shifting gears. Whoops, I hit the wrong button there. Let's go to the next one on your screen. All you have to do is stay right where you are with Socrative, and you'll be able to see the question change automatically on your screen. And the question is, which of these would be the best way to determine the interference at the farthest point from the transmitter? We're talking specifically about networks here. So this is where we would start to see what options are available. We can break it down from there. Would the option be A, use a loopback cable? Would it be B, measure the FEXT, whatever that is? Option C would be to view the CRC count on the network adapter. D would be to perform a throughput test. And E would be to use a TDR, whatever that is, to measure the next, whatever that is. So all of these jumbled words and phrases will be thrown at you during the exam. You need to, of course, know what they are. And of course, you need to understand how they are applied to this particular issue. So which of these would be the best way to determine the interference at the farthest point from the transmitter? If you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You want to instead go to professormesser.com/QA and be able to answer there. Then I can look at your answers and see what those happen to be. I've said in the study group before that I'm trying to get half of you to get this question right. That's what I'm struggling when I'm writing these questions. I want them to be just difficult enough that half of you would know how to answer these. And I want to be difficult enough that half of you would get them wrong. Not because I want you to get them wrong, but it doesn't do anybody any good if we sit here and everybody gets 100% of every question right 100% of the time. So I want to be able to throw something at you that's maybe in a way that CompTIA would like to have you think about it. I also want to give you topics that maybe people don't run into very often but are still on the exam objectives, because CompTIA doesn't really care about the most popular exam objectives. They only care about exam objectives, all of them in general. So we want to be sure that we understand those as well. Let's see how we did with this particular question. You can see we're a little torn. Maybe even kind of a tie for first. You can see that 31% of you said to perform a throughput test, and 33% of you said to use a TDR to measure next. We had second place, I guess you could say, is B, measure the FEXT, the FEXT. We've got 10% of you answered A, to use a loopback cable, and then only 8% said to view the CRC count on the network adapter. So we didn't get a majority on this one. We didn't get over that 50%. I think we're all kind of torn over this D and E and maybe B thrown in there. We kind of threw A and C out. Between those three, which ones would we choose? You know, that's the real question. Well, we need to look at the question and really understand what it was asking about. It's asking about the farthest point. Determine the interference at the farthest point from the transmitter. This is one of the challenges we have when we're taking these copper cables and we're sending through these multiple wires. There's 8 wires in a traditional Ethernet cable these days, and we're using gigabit connectivity, and all 8 of those wires have signal going through them. And so there is a lot of things happening with physics inside of that set of copper cables, and they're interacting with each other. They're both interfering with each other and trying to prevent the interference from each other at the same time. All kinds of interesting things going on. One of the biggest challenges we have, because all of those little copper wires are right next to each other, all sending different signals, is that we have some of the signals that will leak over into the other wires. We call that crosstalk. So whatever signal we're sending across one set of wires may affect and cause interference to other wires that are there. And as you can imagine, if you're sending traffic out of your Ethernet connection, that signal that's next to you is the strongest it's ever going to be, because as it goes down the wire, the signal begins to decrease. When you get attenuation, it begins to go away, it begins to disappear. So we have the most amount of interference that happens right at the beginning, but sometimes we want to know, when we get to the end of the wire, what type of interference did we ultimately get there at the end? And was this interference caused by the other wires? Was it caused by something else? All kinds of interesting things we need to know about. Sometimes you're able, if it's an analog circuit, if you've ever been on a phone where it's an analog traditional POTS line, a traditional analog phone line, and you heard other circuits, you've heard other people talking, it may be because the wires were close to each other. You can hear that leaking out. One good thing to check or test for this crosstalk is to measure it with a cable tester. And I mean an analyzer. I don't mean one that's just going to show you a wire map. I need one that's really able to listen on each one of those wires, understand what signal we're getting, and understand what the relationship is between all of those wires. These are pretty advanced analysis tools that we'd be able to use. And in fact, they're not something you just plug in and you know how to use it. Usually there's a little training involved in being able to do this. If you want to know how much crosstalk is happening right next to you, then you want to get a measurement of near end crosstalk, or next. Obviously, it's the near end. It's close to you. It's the one that you are seeing just as it's leaving your computer. But our question was about the interference at the farthest point from the transmitter. In that case, it would be the far end crosstalk. That is the interference that we're seeing measured far away from the transmitter. That's the one we were most interested in with this question. Most of the time, I will tell you that the statistic that most people would like to see initially is next. Because as I mentioned, that's where we're really going to see the strongest signals, and so you'll see the most amount of interaction, as it is right there immediately being sent out of that near end interface. But sometimes you want to know about the far end. So in our case, with our question, we wanted to know the best way to determine the interference at the farthest point from the transmitter, and in our case, it would be the far end crosstalk. So it would actually be the 18% of us that answered this question, measure the far end crosstalk, got that one right. I kind of blew that one. I'm trying to get 50%. I'm not trying to get 80% of you to get it wrong. I would rather get 50% of you to get it wrong. I'm not sure that's really the most healthy thing to say out loud, but there it is. That's what I'm shooting for, being able to work through all of those things. There is all other options on here. Using a TDR to measure the next is effectively the same as measuring the far end crosstalk. You're usually using a TDR for that as well, a time domain reflectometer. That's that analyzer we were talking about earlier. We'd use both an analyzer to both a TDR to measure both next and the far end crosstalk as well. Performing a throughput test isn't really going to tell us about interference. It really tell us about the throughput to be able to get through here. Viewing the CRC count on the network adapter isn't really going to help us understand about interference as much as just not being able to maybe even hear the signal coming through. That's not what we're shooting for either. Not the best way anyway to determine the interference at the farthest point. And using a loopback cable doesn't help us at all. At that point, you don't even have a far end. You're really just sending it out right back into the same device. So that doesn't work. Being able to work through all of those and have it there. So maybe we've learned something. If nothing, the 18% of us that got it right, you either guessed or you knew right away, oh, it's far end crosstalk. Some of you, though, didn't know what this was about. In the chat room, you were even saying, well, I wasn't aware of using these time domain reflectometers and what the near and crosstalk was and what the interference was. And now you know it's absolutely on the CompTIA exam objectives. And now you'll be able to get that one right. If we ask that one again, 100% of you being able to work through that and get it right. I've got another question for you. Let's jump to our next question on the list. You can just stay right there in Socrative and you'll be able to see this one pop up, which says, what is the maximum distance for 10 gigabit Ethernet over Category 6 cabling? What is the maximum distance for 10 gigabit Ethernet over Category 6 cabling? And you have some options available. And A, B, C, D, or E available. They are 10 meters, 25 meters, 55 meters, 85 meters, and 100 meters. What is the maximum distance for 10 gigabit Ethernet over Category 6 cabling? This is a relatively straightforward question. This is really a definition question. You probably won't see a lot of these on your Network Plus exam, but it does have to make you think about a couple of things. First, we've got a topology type, 10 gigabit Ethernet. We can assume in this particular case that it's over twisted pair wiring because we're talking about Category 6 cabling, which of course is twisted pair cabling. So what is the maximum distance for 10 gigabit Ethernet, Category 6 cabling? We've got these two things. Now we need to know how far, based on the specifications, can we really send a signal and reliably expect it to be heard on the other side? That's a really good question. If you think you know, you can go to professormesser.com/QA and you'll be able to answer this question. Cabling is an interesting one. Sometimes I'll see some really bad questions asked about cabling. They'll say, how fast is Category 6 cabling? It's not fast. There is no speed. It's a cable. It's a piece of copper. There's no speed associated with a category of cable. The real question that you're looking for, and when they ask questions about cabling, you need to understand what Ethernet standard are you talking about? Because different Ethernet standards are used in different ways over different types of cable. There are certainly in cases like this one where what is the maximum distance? We need to know the maximum distance for a very specific kind of topology over a very specific kind of cable. Let's see how we did. There they are. So 54% of us, if we did this right, the 55% of us answered E, 100 meters. 31% of us said 55 meters. And then we've got single digits for 10 meters, 25 meters, and 85 meters. Not a lot going on there. Let's look at 10 gigabit Ethernet running over copper and what the options are for this. You'll often see this referred to as 10G base T as this 10 gig over copper. A lot of people will run 10 gig over fiber. You'll see quite a bit of that. Although we're seeing more and more 10 gig over copper as people are able to put the right kind of cable into their data center and reliably send that information, send the signals back and forth over that. It's using, interestingly enough, 500 megahertz frequencies to do this. So commonly we see gigabit Ethernet on a Cat5 cable. Gigabit Ethernet is where we commonly see that. But if you run gigabit Ethernet at 1 gigabit, it's running at 125 megahertz. It's interesting that we're running 125 megahertz to do 1 gig Ethernet, and we're only needing to go at 500 megahertz to do 10 gig Ethernet. It's interesting the difference in signalings that we're using there, allowing us to take the speed and multiply it by 10, but not increase the frequency rate on the wire by 10. So we're, of course, the lower the frequency, the easier it's going to be for you to send that signal across. But you have to think about for these twisted pair cables, Category 6 cable will support 55 meters of 10 gig traffic over Category 6 there. So if you're running a Category 6 cable, 55 meters is about the standard. What it basically says, you'll probably get about 55. There's no real actual specific number because there's so many variables involved, but that's the one we pretty much go with. That's pretty close to what we would think we would get in that particular case. There is an augmented version of Category 6, Category 6A for augmented, that adds some additional capabilities, especially for keeping the wires away from each other and being able to minimize the amount of crosstalk. And those will allow you to extend 10 gigabit Ethernet to that 100-meter distance that we're so accustomed to dealing with when we talk about Ethernet. So make sure when you're looking at a question dealing with category 6, do they mean category 6 or do they mean category 6A? Because there are big differences between those two. This is what we really run into. So in our particular case, I asked you about category 6 and 10 gigabit Ethernet. So when you deal with that, you're looking at, as we mentioned, 55 meters. So the 31% of you that answered C, 55 meters, you got that one absolutely right. Well done. It would not be 100 meters. You would need category 6A in the question for 100 meters to actually be correct. So well done with that one. Folks that answered C, 55 meters, 31% of you got that one absolutely correct. There are so many things on the Network Plus exam that you have to remember. There's cabling, there's fiber, there are connectors, there's information about proxies and VPNs and routing and subnetting and this and that. You know, there's so many different things. One of the things that I've done is try to take everything and put it into a document. In fact, I tried to take the things that I thought were the most important and put them in a set of notes. And what you folks did was actually come back to me and said, well, we don't want what you think is most important. We want everything. Take every single one of your videos, take every bit of text from every single one of your videos and put it into this document. So a document that started off as being 15 pages is now a document that is 65 pages long. But I think it's a much better document. I think you guys were right that I should have added every single bit of text, every graphic, every chart I made, every network diagram I created, everything from every video. And they're all very specifically labeled. There's a table of contents at the beginning. Each one of these is very specific to a video. So you can go to my video 1.11 for storage area networks, and this is every bit of text from that particular video. And what I think has really happened is people said, this is great because I can decide what information is really the best. Just give me everything so I don't have to keep writing them all down every time I go through this. And so if I go to the front, you can see an extensive set of table of contents that are here, an introduction, and then we go right into all of this really great content. Something that is available right now to be able to do that. The course notes themselves are available to download in PDF format for $15. And every dollar goes back to keeping the website up and running. I have multiple servers and lots of traffic I have to deal with every month. And I got to tell you, this goes a long way to keeping that going. So I want to thank you now for the people that bought it. Thank you for your support. For the people that are considering buying it, thank you for your consideration. There's also a printed version. So some of you have said, yeah, PDF's great. I like to download, but I want a 65-page, a little bit more, because 65 pages is just the actual course notes. The introduction, table of contents, that's another 5 or 6 pages. But it's all in this full color, nice bound, perfect bound. They call it a perfect binding book. So it's one that is a nice 8.5 by 11. So it's a large size. So you see, instead of you printing it all out, it's right there. So there's another option there that if you buy this online, it is an extra $15 because it costs a lot to print things in full color with 65 pages. But I also include a PDF version too. So as soon as you buy it, you can download the PDF, and then a few days later in the mail, you're going to be getting the full color book, the physical book with it as well. You can find out all about that at professormesser.com/NPCN Network Plus Course Notes is what that stands for. And I want to thank you for your ongoing support with that and being able to keep things going here. Really could not do it without you. Thank you so much. Let's get another question in. Let's keep going too. Next question is, which of the following would be the best way to prevent a buffer overflow attack? Sounds like a security question, doesn't it? It is. There is a whole section on security on the Network Plus exam, and this comes directly from the exam objectives associated with these attack types in the Network Plus exam. Which of the following would be the best way to prevent a buffer overflow attack? Would it be to use A, TCP-based firewall ACLs? Would it be B, a URL filter? Would it be C, a VPN concentrator? Would it be D, an IPS? Or would it be E, a load balancer? Which of the following would really be the best way to prevent a buffer overflow attack? One of these is going to be right. And I'm looking at the list of these, like which one of these could I really use? And one of the things you'll run into, and this is true on the exam as well, not just my questions, is that some of these questions I could very possibly answer one or two or maybe even three of these and be technically correct. That I could use this to stop it, I could use this to stop it, I could use this to prevent it. But that wasn't the question. The question was, which of the following would be the best way to prevent a buffer overflow attack? So you do need to know about how these technologies are implemented so that you can use the best way to implement the attack. If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. The Q stands for questions. The A stands for answers. Don't know if you're aware of that. It was not done randomly. I thought about it. Then what would be the best thing? Well, it would be QA. ProfessorMesser.com/QA will take you right to the Socrative page. Be a great way to do it. So let's see how we did when that, because many people are so busy. I can tell when you're Googling buffer overflow attack. I know maybe you're going through my course notes and trying to find the buffer overflow section. That would be the way to do it. But here's how you answered this question. You can see that kind of got a tie for first again. So 37% of you said IPS, 32% of you said load balancer, 26% of you, that's a strong second place, said TCP-based firewall, ACLs. It's an ACL. Some people say ACL. I would say that's wrong. It just doesn't sound good. I think ACL sounds better. Anyway, 3% each for URL filter and VPN concentrator. Probably don't need to go down that road, do I? So what is the right answer here that we're really looking for? So we want to prevent a buffer overflow. I've got these 5 options. These are the only 5 options available to me. Which one is it really going to be? Well, it's going to be an IDS/IPS. IPS would be really the best way to prevent a buffer overflow based on those 5 options. There are other ways to prevent buffer overflows. But remember, when you're reading these questions, the question is a self-contained world. You're not looking outside the question. You might think, but I know much better ways to prevent a buffer overflow attack. Well, they didn't ask you for much better ways. They asked you from these 5 things, which one would it be? So that is one of those where you do run into, no, I don't know if that's really the one you would know. You have 5 options. You have to use one of those 5 options. So that's absolutely what it would be. So IPS is really our best option there. And the reason for that is that a buffer overflow attack, as it's coming through the network, very often can be very well defined with these known types of attacks. If you've ever used anything like an intrusion product, something like being able to run some malicious code against a server, you know it's using very well-known code bases, that there's really only one way to do this, and this is how you do it. Well, it's perfect for an IPS, because an IPS is really going to be looking at a very well-known signature to be able to match coming through. And if it can match that, it can stop it. But it's not just about working with a buffer overflow. An IPS can stop all kinds of malicious types of attacks, things like attacks against operating systems. You can stop SQL injections. You can stop well-known worms and viruses from coming through, although it's not commonly done for that. If it's something that's well-known, especially a worm, that's a great way to do it. And today's intrusion prevention technologies can match thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of signatures simultaneously without slowing down any of the speed of your network. They are remarkable pieces of technology. You can do quite a bit with those. Obviously, we're talking here about an IPS, which is intrusion prevention, to be able to do that, and not an IDS, which simply gives you an alarm and an alert saying, hey, somebody just tried to do a buffer overflow. Hope they didn't do that. I hope you had something else in place to stop them because they just came through. Just thought you'd like to know. That's why we don't use IDS anymore. That doesn't help us. It's too late. By the time we've got the alarm, it's too late to know that came through, and being able to work through all of these things. So how did we do with this? Well, you can see that 37% of us, the largest percentage of folks, did answer IPS. We didn't quite get to 50%, which is what I was shooting for, but that's pretty good. 38% of you said IPS. 29% said load balancer. In this case, load balancer would simply take a load across multiple servers and spread the load out. So I could have, in fact, if you're on the Professor Messer website right now, you could be on one of many servers because I have multiple web servers back there. You don't see it. To you, it's just professormesser.com, but behind the scenes, I have a load balancer so that I can have many people hitting my site and one server isn't taking that entire load. We can at least get a little bit more of that there. TCP-based firewall ACLs. Well, an ACL is not a very good way to stop a buffer overflow attack. And a access control list is very commonly used to allow or disallow a port number, an IP address, or some other type of information that's in the packet, not commonly used to stop some type of malicious attack like a buffer overflow. We've got URL filters. URL filters can stop us from going to a particular website, but they're not very good at preventing an inbound buffer overflow attack. And a VPN concentrator is used to provide secure communication between 2 points. That's not a very good way to prevent buffer overflow either. It's more of an enabling tool to be able to do that. So hopefully you were able to answer this one as well, which would be DIPS is the correct answer. 38% of you got that one right. So a couple things folks are saying from a previous question that whenever we look at the length of category 6, and in fact, they were saying here that in category 6, the maximum allowed length of category 6 for a 10 megabit, 100 megabit, or gigabit would be 100 meters, which is correct. You can go 100 meters on category 6 if it's 1 gigabit and lower. But our question, of course, was about 10 gig Ethernet. And 10 gig Ethernet has a completely different set of requirements when we're dealing with category 6. So you're half right that yes, it is true that 10 megabit, 100 megabit, and 1000 megabit, which is 1 gigabit, are allowed to go 100 meters with category 6. But as I mentioned, the cable doesn't have a speed or a particular length. The standard running on a particular cable type does. So you have to be very careful that you read into the question to know what type of cable are we talking about and what standard are we talking about, because only the combination of those two things is really going to give you the right answer. So pretty important. The folks that are asking about the course notes, is there a way to upgrade and buy the physical notes? So if you've already bought my PDF version and you want the physical version, I'd be more than happy to provide you with a credit that will pay for, that will cover the cost you've already spent on the digital version, so that you're able to also purchase the physical notes as well. Be glad to do that. Just send me a note directly. There's a contact us link at the top of the website, and you can send me a note. It goes right to my phone, goes right to my inbox, and I'll be able to provide you with a coupon code that can give you the money that you've spent right off the top, so you don't lose any cash. I think that's only fair, and I appreciate you wanting to do that. So absolutely, we can make that happen. Let's get to another question. We'll just keep these going. I've got another one available to you now. This one really requires you know something about NAC. NAC. I don't think I'm saying that right. NAC. Am I saying that right? I think I am. I think that's right. The question is, which of these would be most associated with NAC? NAC is the term NAC. Which of these would be most associated with NAC? Would it be 802.1x? Would it be WPA2? Would it be TLS? Would it be SNMP? Would it be SMB? One of these would be most associated with NAC. We have to know what these things are. What if you even know what NAC is, you still wouldn't know how it's used? It's another one of those questions where we not only have to know what the technology name is, we have to know how we would be able to implement it. It's a common theme, and you should be asking this question of yourself too. When you're reading through your book or you're looking at a flashcard and it says, what is NAC? NAC is this. It's not good enough just to know what NAC is or what the glossary term is or what the abbreviation stands for. Say to yourself, how is this used? How would it be implemented? That's why I always draw a diagram in my videos. I always try to provide some type of real world stories about how these things work together so that you can really work through how you would use this technology if you had to implement it yourself. And one of the challenges, of course, is that if you take everything in Network Plus, I don't think anybody's single job deals with everything that's in Network Plus. But as you go through the years, I've done a lot of this. I've probably touched it and looked at and worked with every single technology that's listed in Network Plus. You just end up dealing with all of it at some point. And it's probably going to take you a number of positions, a number of jobs through your career to be able to do that. Which of these would be most associated with NAC? I wonder how we did with this one. We've got, we'll go back and forth on this one, but so close to a 50%, but is it a correct 50%? 47% of you said 802.1x. In second place, 23% of you said WPA2. 16% of you said SNMP. And then single digits, 9% said TLS and 6% said SMB. So the real question is about NAC. NAC is where we start talking about really most commonly used for switches or connectivity to the network. It's really talking about an interface, a switch. We're talking about, people say ports. We're talking about port security. We're not talking about TCP or UDP ports. We're talking about physical interfaces on a switch or physical interfaces on a wireless access point, that type of thing. That's one of those that you run into. Usually an administrator will set up certain ports to be enabled or disabled so that nobody can walk into the closet and plug in their system. But you can't always rely on that. They could, of course, unplug a working interface and plug into it. We also have these switches set up to also check for duplicate MAC addresses so that someone couldn't spoof another MAC address on the network and mess things up that way. The way that most organizations, most small, large businesses, really everything in between, will set up security for their switches is with some type of implementation of network access control. That is the NAC we were talking about. Network access control, you may see this referred to as port-based network access control, which would be PNAC. But most commonly, whenever we talk about this technology, in the industry, we just say NAC. Oh, we're using NAC. We've got a NAC implementation. We've configured NAC for that particular device. Nobody ever says PNAC. Nobody ever says PNAC. Nobody ever says port NAC. We just say NAC. But you'll see it written that way sometimes, just so people can really make a delineation that we're talking about interfaces, physical ports on one of these types of network infrastructure devices. The way that these work, though, imagine in an enterprise, if we had to connect everybody to the wireless access points over the wireless network, we're in a conference room. All right, everybody, the way that you get to the wireless network is to use the secret word cupcake. That's our wireless password. It's the one that's the WPA2 password for everybody. It's a shared passphrase. It's cupcake. And now everybody has it in the room. The problem is that you can't control that. What do you have to tell everybody in the building, that the wireless access WPA2 shared passphrase is cupcake? And what about people that leave the building? What about guests? And you don't want them to have access once they leave. What about people that leave the organization? And now they know the secret phrase. So that's why we don't use PSK in an enterprise, pre-shared keys. That's what that refers to. If you're ever configuring an access point, it says WPA2 PSK. That means it's a pre-shared key, or it's a key that you would write cupcake, and then you tell everybody who needs access, use cupcake, which is great at home with your family, with friends that come over. That's fine. But in an enterprise, you don't want to do that. In an enterprise, you want to be able to have people use their normal logins to be able to gain access to the network. The same login they use to log into Windows, the same login they use to log into the VPN, be the same login that they use to gain access to the network. And you've already configured your devices. Don't allow anybody access to the network unless they know their specific private username and password that they use for everything else. And so when they connect to the wireless network, the first thing that pops up is enter your credentials. Well, my credentials are JMesser. My password is cupcake1. Boom. My password really isn't cupcake1. But you know what I'm saying, because the person next to me will have their own username and their own password. And it's checking all of this against a centralized authentication database. That makes it so that if somebody does leave the organization and you turn their account off, it automatically turns off accounts and access to all of these network devices. So very easy to have this here. You don't have to do MAC filtering. You don't have to do weird passphrases, or you don't have to change the passwords on your wireless access point every day. You simply configure 802.1x with this network access control, and that's the way it works. Now, network access control, by the way, can go very deep. It can configure switch settings so that when you log in, it recognizes who you are. It says, oh, you're in IT. I'm going to check the interface that you're on, change its VLAN to be the IT VLAN, and now you're on the VLAN that you normally would be on. If you go to another desk or go to another building and you log in, it will change the interface on that switch to be for your VLAN. If you were in marketing, it would change the VLAN for marketing. If you were in shipping and receiving, it would change the interface VLAN to be for shipping and receiving. So there's a lot of things that even happen behind the scenes with NAC that we really don't get into with Network Plus. And to be fair, not everybody implements that level of network access control because it's a little complex and it's changing configurations on the switch and what happens when it doesn't work properly. Those are the challenges you run into. Some NAC solutions work fantastic though, and I've worked with many organizations that use it extensively in that way. So it just depends on where you go and how they like to use it. So the real answer here, which of these would be most associated with NAC, would be A, the 49% of you that said 802.1x. Got that one absolutely right. That would be the way to most associate yourself with network access control. It would not be WPA2, which is simply, I say simply, but it is simply the wireless encryption type that you would use once people were on the network, would be WPA2. The third most popular option, SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol, used more for managing the network devices, not for doing network access control of the devices. SNMP doesn't really happen when you're trying to authenticate and gain access to the network. If you are a network administrator and you wanted to know how healthy is that particular wireless access point, what are the signal strengths that it's seeing right now, how long has my switch been up and running, what type of memory do I have available in my address space in that switch, that's what I'd use SNMP for, is to query those devices and get a response. TLS, also known as SSL, is a very common encryption type that we use in our browsers and elsewhere, and that is not used necessarily with NAC. Certainly would not be most associated with NAC. And then we've got SMB, the server message block protocol that's commonly used in Windows types environments, although it's used in others. And the SMB, the 6% of you were thinking that was it, but that's really how we transfer files and print and do some of the more operating system level controls in our Windows environments. Being able to work through that. There is a lot there. By the way, if you're watching this study group for continuing education credit, you already have your A+, your Network Plus, or your Security Plus, and you would like 1 hour of webinar-based CEUs, you can go to the top or the bottom of my website where it says Contact Us, and in that Contact Us link, put your name, put your email address, make sure it's right so I can get back to you. I think I've now got it in there, so you have to put it twice. So if you put it wrong twice, that's a different problem. Tell me that in that note somewhere that is the September 27th or the September Network Plus study group. You don't have to be that specific, but September, so I can find this, because you're also going to put somewhere in that note to me that I will read the word NAC, the abbreviation NAC, NAC has to be somewhere in there. That will let me know that you must have watched this. You had to have seen it because you knew the secret word. And I will, usually takes a week or so, sometimes longer, to be able to go through these, send you a response back. I digitally sign it, so you'll be able to do that. Makes good use of getting a CEU out to you. It's all digital. It's a digital certificate that goes out to you that I've digitally signed so that you know it really came from me, and give you that 1 hour of support there, being able to get through all of those things. I've got other questions here. Let's get, yeah, if you watch multiple times, not this video, but if you watch multiple videos, you can absolutely get multiple CEUs. I think CompTIA allows you, for Security Plus, I know they allow you 10 CEUs that are webinar CEUs. So you can't watch all of them to be able to do it. You can't watch 50 of these or 40 of these, whatever it takes to renew your particular certification. But that's the way you would do it, is to be able to watch this. You get at least, I think it's 5 or 8 or 10 or something like that, depending on what you're doing. What you're doing, it would be the certification that you're trying to renew. And you'll have to check the website to be able to do that. And check the CompTIA website to know what a continuing education unit is and how to use them. Some people also use these continuing education unit credits for other things. Doesn't have to be for CompTIA. That's completely up to you. We've got a few minutes left, so let's get through maybe one more question. I think we can fit another one in here. And the question is, which of the following would be an advantage of using a host-based firewall over a network-based firewall? Why would I want to use host-based over network-based? And what are the differences? Why would I want to use host-based? What's the advantage of using host-based over network-based? Would it be filtering occurs at layer 4? That's your advantage of using a host-based firewall over network-based. Would it be that it does not track state? Would it be that it uses an additional IP address for unfiltered traffic? Would it be that it can examine encrypted data without a proxy? Or would it be that it decreases resources on the host? One of those would be the best, or one of these would be the advantage of using a host-based firewall over a network-based firewall. There are times when you want to use a host-based firewall. There are also times when you prefer using, or it would be a better choice to use a network-based firewall. But this question is asking advantage of using a host-based firewall over a network-based firewall. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to answer that question. Figure out those pieces. It's a good question. What do we do? If you're doing anything with firewalls, and I think pretty much everyone who's working in any size organization is probably using both of these. You're probably using host-based firewalls, and at the exact same time, you're using network-based firewalls. You certainly should be. There shouldn't be a reason to turn off either one of these. This would be a bad idea. There's some really good reasons to run both simultaneously. But I'm really looking at the advantage of that host-based firewall. What good is the host-based? If you've got a network-based, shouldn't that cover everything? It does not. It does not. There are certainly things a host-based firewall can do for you. And hopefully you know what those things are, because we've got them in the list of things. So what would it be? What would it be? I'll give you another couple. Folks, you're still Googling. I need to give you another moment to finish your search through the big index that is Google. You're not going to find it. These questions are all brand new. I write these questions brand new for you every month. They're not in the Google. They're not, unless somebody wrote exactly the same question with exactly the same answers. Wouldn't that be creepy? That would be a little weird, but it would not be the case. Let's see how we did with this one. Well, we're a little torn. We've got two possible answers, maybe a third. Number one on our list with 38% of you said, can examine encrypted data without a proxy. 28% of you said, filtering occurs at layer 4. Coming in probably third would be 17% of you that said it decreases resources on the host. 11% said it uses an additional IP address for unfiltered traffic, and 5% said it does not track state. So which would it be for working with these? Well, host-based firewalls are fantastic. They just run right on your operating system. They're usually built into the operating system, although you can get third-party host-based firewalls. We often see them called personal firewalls. They're just a piece of software running in your operating system. You don't need extra hardware. You don't need anything special to run them. You can, of course, use a third party if you'd like, but I use the ones that are built into the operating systems that I use. I use Linux, I use Windows, and I use Mac OS X. And in all of those, I use their built-in firewalls. Just makes it easy. All of these firewalls, and pretty much every firewall you would run into these days, is stateful. It understands the flows of traffic that are going back and forth. It's not just a simple filter. It really recognizes when someone initiates a conversation, and it knows if the reply to that is associated with that original conversation. It's really nice when that state is kept. It's much more secure to have something that understands state. And indeed, your host-based firewalls are stateful. Your network-based firewalls these days are stateful. You don't really run into devices you use for security these days that don't understand the state of the traffic flows. In Windows, we run the Windows firewall. For example, Windows firewall can filter traffic by port number, can filter traffic by application. One of the advantages of having a host-based firewall, it knows what apps are running right now because it's on the operating system, and it can allow or disallow traffic by application, which not all network-based firewalls do. although most of the most modern ones do these days as well. Network-based firewalls, of course, are boxes that sit on the network. They're an appliance. They can filter at most commonly TCP or UDP port, OSI layer 4. But these days, most of the modern firewalls, what we call next generation firewalls, which are really this generation firewalls, will also filter at the application level. These can encrypt traffic in and out of the network, but they're proxying it to make that happen. They can also just do normal proxying with these as well. And most of the time you run into these, it's they're doing layer 3. They're looking at applications at layer 7. They're filtering things at layer 4. Pretty advanced devices to be able to do this. So when we look at the differences between these, filtering occurs at layer 4. Well, filtering occurs at layer 4, whether you're using a host-based firewall or a network-based firewall. That's not our answer. We've got decreases resources on the host, if only. Adding firewalls and other services to your computer are going to increase the number of resources on the host. It's one of the challenges, the problems we run into is being able to work through these. It's something we always see with host-based devices. Network-based firewalls, of course, there'd be 0 resources being used on the host. That's not exactly what we're shooting for either. We've got 10% said uses an additional IP address for unfiltered traffic and does not track state. None of those are true. The answer is that because we're on the workstation itself, we see all traffic going in and out, and we see traffic after it has been decrypted and before it has been encrypted. We get to see all of this on the computer without needing to go through a proxy to do its own SSL or other types of decryption associated with that. So a host-based firewall, one of its big advantages is that it can absolutely examine encrypted data without using a proxy. The 39% of you that answered D got that one absolutely right. Well done with that one. Whenever we start looking at firewalls and working through all of these different devices, they're all listed in the exam objectives. Everything in here, by the way, as we've talked about today, are in the exam objectives. Make sure that you go to the exam objectives and get them right now and use them as a checklist. Everything you need to know to pass your Network Plus exam is in here. Go to professormesser.com/objectives or go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, and go download these and use them as your checklist. These are amazing. They are everything you need to know is in here. People ask me all the time, what do I need to know? You need to know everything that's in this list. That's it. If you know everything in the list, you're going to pass your exam. You really understand this content, you're going to pass it. I've got a week left. What do I need to study? You need to go through this list and check mark everything you don't know, and that's what you need to study. It's that simple. They really spell it out. Other certifications don't do this for you. If you take Cisco, they don't do this. VMware doesn't do this. Microsoft doesn't do this. Nobody else does this. So make sure you take advantage of that. They really spell out for you everything you need to know in the exam objectives. Well, as I mentioned, we're a couple weeks late and giving you this study group. But there's another one of these coming up. The next Network Plus study group is going to be October the 11th. So really in like 2 weeks from now. Is that how that works out? Like I don't get a gap at the end of this month. We just go right into October the 11th is that next study group. And it'll be a couple weeks. So we're coming up pretty close on having that there. Next week will be A+. The week after that will be Network Plus. And the week after that will be Security Plus. And then we're through October. How'd that happen? Just like that. And having that there. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A today, but there's a lot more coming. Stick around. I've got open phone lines coming up in just a moment. You can, of course, if you are during the rest of the week, you can always see what's going on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook by typing in professormesser.com/Twitter/YouTube/Facebook/ whatever it happens to be. Don't forget about my course notes. You can find out information about those at professormesser.com/NPCN, Network Plus Course Notes. That's what those stand for. There's, of course, my thanks to GTS Learning who helped sponsor this. I use the GTS Learning books to create my videos. And one of the things they also provide is a set of live labs that you have an entire set of networks set up on the live labs, online, virtualized, something you might want to check out that they have available at professormesser.com/netlabs. We do one of these every month. But you may be watching this replay and wondering, this is well past October. when is the next event? Well, you can always find out by going to professormesser.com/calendar. It'll tell you exactly when the next event is going to be. Well, that brings us to the end of the first hour. Stick around for hour 2. We've got a lot more to come. I've got the phone lines will open up. There's an open phone lines too. You don't have to ask Network Plus. You can, but you can really ask about anything. Stick around. We'll see you in the second hour right after this. Thanks for joining us. See you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. There is so much to go through. And I did these weeks ago because it's been like 3 or 4 weeks now. It's been 3 weeks since I made up those questions. So they were all new questions for me. I didn't remember any of this. What happened? I don't know. I just don't remember them. Let's get the phone lines open. I've got to call in to my own phone lines, and then I will give you the phone number. And you can call. You can, of course, also ask questions in the chat room that you will find at professormesser.com/live. And being able to have that there too. Let's, where's my Skypey? Let's get Skypey going. Do I have, let's start the host show. Let's host a show. Let's start the show. Now that I've started the show, you could even call in if you wanted to. Well, I call in and I'll start up the Skype. It's right here. You can't see it, but it is over here. And I'm going to call into my own show. How's that work? It's a really good question.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome. So what do I do now? I push this button and it says,
your show number.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll put in my show number.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Yeah. All right. And I'll put that in with this thing. And then it says,
welcome.
Yes, it does. So I'm able to get in into my own phone lines there. So if you wanted to call in, you're more than welcome to. You can call in by picking up the phone and calling 855-785-RJ45. You can also call from anywhere in the world, absolutely free, no Skype minutes required. You can call on Skype by putting a +1 at the beginning and calling +1 855-785-7545. That'd be another way to do it too. So you can get through all of those. I think it should be one of the best ways to do it. And getting through all of those. I am in the chat room. People asking what I'm doing with gaming these days. The battlegrounds, the player unknown things. I'm just not good at them. I've just tried that. I don't have what it takes, people. You know what it is? It's the stress. I can't handle the stress. For those of you who haven't seen it, the most popular type of a battleground game like that right now is one where you're put down in an area and the area gets smaller and smaller and you have to kill everybody else. It's the last man standing kind of thing. I just can't handle it. I'm bad. Okay, so you're bad too. I'm miserable at it. I'm awful at it. And I just get so worked up. It's not relaxing to me. It's too hectic. I'm behind every corner, cowering, like, please don't shoot me. I can't handle it. And you kids with your reflexes, I can't hang. I'm doing a lot of Destiny 2 right now on Xbox One. So that's where I'm spending most of my time right now. The few hours I have at night to do some type of not sitting in front of the computer is what I've been working through on that. Quite a challenge to work through all of those pieces. Most of what I'm doing right now is Security Plus is coming up. The new version will be, the new exam will be available at the end of October, so about a month from now. And so I'm working on the new Security Plus content. And right after that, probably we'll see Network Plus updated too. So we'll have it there, have all those pieces available. I think it's whenever I start going through, what do we do? How does this work? Where can we do? I think that's one of the best ways to do it. And have that there. Let's go to the phone lines, though. Let me make sure the phone line's turned up so you can actually hear the caller who's calling from the 352 area code. Are you there, caller? What is your name?
Professor Messer, this is Mike Mizell. Can you hear me?
Hey, Mike, I can hear you fine. How are you, sir? What can we do for you?
Oh, it's an honor. It's an honor and a privilege to speak with you, sir.
An honor here as well.
I just want to let you know that I just passed my Security Plus this morning.
Nice.
And fantastic feeling. I had my A+, my Net+, and of course it's a huge to get the under the belt, so to speak, for the resume, the Security Plus. And of course, I took your advice. I scored a 753.
Nice.
So that was because you were funny last week when you said if you get a 751, you've overstudied.
Yeah, you got 3 points too many.
I did, man, and it was like I was like, wow, it was a big deal.
Oh, that's great.
So, but I wanted to. The reason I called, sir, I wanted to say thank you for all you do. It's tremendous to have you as an outlet for another resource to obviously challenge and heighten my studies. And my question to you, sir, is: are you going to do videos for ICND 1 and move over to the Cisco a little bit?
I'd love to do some more Cisco content. For those of you familiar on the Cisco side, the CCENT is a very popular certification. The CCENT is very niche, but it consists of, for most people, 2 separate exams, an ICND 1 and an ICND 2. I've created course notes for an ICND 1, but I don't have a course for it. So there's a little bit of a problem with that. There's a little bit of egg and chicken issue associated with that, isn't there? I would love to be able to create videos to go along with those. I have some content that if I just had time to sit in front of something and record, I have content in there we could start recording today. The real challenge is really physics. So I've got Security Plus that's being updated end of the month. They're expecting information. So the next few months for me are really going to be Security Plus months. The next months after that are going to be Network Plus months. And then there'll be a little bit of a gap in 2018, and we'll probably see A Plus being updated somewhere in there. Those are the big 3 that I like to keep running on my website. But then somewhere in there, either in the middle of 2018 or after the A Plus stuff is done, there's now a pretty big gap by a couple of years where A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus are not going to be updated. And I have to make a decision. What am I going to do? And I've got a lot of ideas, and I got a lot of thoughts, and I'd love to do some Cisco stuff. I'm just not at the point where I can commit to anybody that's absolutely what I'm going to do. But I love doing it. It's enjoyable to me. It's things I know. So it's up there on my list pretty high.
Well, one of the things that I was trying to decide now at this juncture in my career and my IT pursuit is to consider going maybe a Microsoft pursuit, because a lot of the machines, we still see a lot of folks still gravitating to 7 and so forth. And, maybe the transition to 8 and 10. But should I consider going the Cisco side, which would be more maybe what I enjoy, of course, is routing and networking and so forth. So I'm trying to decide.
It's a bit of a challenge. You've got so many different variables associated with that. My default answer, which isn't always the best answer, but I think long term it's the best answer. It may not be the best short term answer, but the best long term answer, I tell people, is do what you enjoy. Because in IT, there's always a job somewhere doing the type of thing that you would like to do. It may not be completely obvious to you, and it may not be in the geography where you live, but if that's something you really, really want to do, there's a job out there that would allow you to do that. But that's sort of a longer term, that's the long tail, as they say, because you have immediate requirements now. I heard a small voice in the background that like those little things like to eat, and they like to have clothes, and they like to have a place to live. So there's, of course, that requirement that you have a job that you're able to pay bills and you're able to support the family and you're able to do the things that you want to do as a family. But you have to find something that's going to allow you to grow. And I think the best way to do that is to find the things that interest you. Fortunately, and this was back when I was doing networking, it's still this way today. Fortunately, networking is extremely popular. It's one where you can be a network expert in so many different organizations. Everybody's looking for a good network person. It has a natural progression into other parts of the organization. You can move into management. You can move into security. You can do jobs that will allow you to travel places. You can have jobs that don't that have no travel associated with them. There's a lot of flexibility there. It's really about finding the right thing. Try to do as much networking with people as you can. Join the local Microsoft user groups. Join the local Cisco user groups if you have some in your area. Meet those people. Find out what they're doing. I didn't know that IT security would be as fun for me as it turned out to be. So I kind of evolved into it from a career in networking. So sometimes even trying to make the decision on what you enjoy the most is you aren't even sure yet what it's going to look like 10 years from now. So
Agreed.
just kind of follow the path. The IT is just like a river. When I started working with technology, there wasn't an internet, there wasn't a Yahoo, there wasn't a Google, there wasn't a YouTube, none of those things existed. So how could I have ever thought, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit in front of a camera, I'm going to talk to people on a live stream around the world, and we're going to do this cool stuff. I had no idea. There was no way I could have even thought of that. But I hopped in the river, started doing some network things, and I just kind of followed where the path was taking me, and this is how we ended up getting to where we are today. And it works that way really for everybody in kind of almost everywhere you go.
Well, thank you for your time, sir. It's an honor and, again, a privilege to speak with you. And I will continue to follow, and I get your quizzes every morning. And I have my 801, 802.
Nice.
And, of course, when I get challenged with my 901, 902 information, I'm like, OMG.
What is that?
I like, just meaning the fact that just I can't answer those questions sometimes as accurate as it. I pretty much can knock the Net Plus out of the park. But boy, the A plus, whoa. So those challenges are still in front, and I'm going to still continue to enjoy the education and the process. I really enjoy it.
Never ends. Keep it going, and you're going to do fine. Congratulations on your Security Plus mic. Best of luck.
Thank you, sir. You have a great day.
Take care. That's always the thing you don't know about when you're starting out in IT is you don't know where it's going to take you. You think you know what you want to do, and you sort of have this short-term view of what you would like to be able to do, and that's kind of the best you can do. In my career, I've probably had, 12 or 15 jobs, something like that. Every couple of years, I would go to a new job. Maybe it's not 15. Maybe it's closer to 10 or 12. And some jobs I would go off, and I would come back to work for a company I previously worked for. I would boomerang back. I did that a couple of times. And of course, the ground is always changing underneath you. A company you're working with today may get bought by a bigger company tomorrow, and suddenly you're working for someone new, even though you never moved your desk. That happens a lot in this industry too. You just go with it. Don't worry so much about the chaos in the world. It's going to be there whether you freak out about it or whether you don't freak out about it. The chaos will simply exist. Don't put yourself in the chaos. You should focus on what you want to be able to do. You should really come up with a short-term plan of what you want to be able to do, and then think, if I really wanted to have fun, this is what I would plan on doing. Messer Studios is over 10 years old now. But when we started out 10 years ago, I said, I'd like to I was traveling, international travel. I was in a hotel room every night. I only saw my family on the weekends. It was interesting, but not fun in many ways. And I said, what I really want to do is have a job where I'm at home, maybe internet-based, maybe something where I can create something and people would be able to use it. I would love a company that would be a win-win, that I could feed my family, but it will also help folks. How could we do that? What would that look like? And we wrote it out. We figured out, here's the way this would work. How could it be a company? How could it be a business? How could it be profitable? How could it help me pay the mortgage? How could it pay the electricity? Well, we could do this. And it's just an evolving process. But if you don't build what you want to get to, you're never going to get there because there was never a path. There was never a bridge to it. So you have to think about, I want to be able to run some of the biggest networks in the world, or I want to get into cloud computing and work with orchestration, or I want to set up some of the highest speed networks around. Go do that. But you have to build a path to be able to get there. Let's go back to the phones. And being able to have that there. I'm looking at the chat room, make sure I didn't miss anything while I was just talking. Let's go to the 517 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello.
Hi. What's your name?
My name's Chelsea.
Chelsea, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hey, I'd like to know if you have the A Plus and the Security Plus in paperback.
This would be my course notes you would be referring to specifically?
Yes.
So very similar to my Network Plus course notes, which are available in a full color paper physical. I absolutely do have course notes For A Plus and Network Plus, I absolutely do, and Security Plus, absolutely do have those in a printed form. I started off by making I think the A Plus I made into the first paper version of this. I used to do it completely digital. And I thought, who would want a paper book? And then just for fun, I made a paper version of it and put it out for sale. And people said, well, this is great. I'll take a lot of these. I said, what was I thinking? Of course, people would like a physical book. So now anytime you see a course notes from me, it's always available in both a digital form and in a physical printed form. And as I mentioned in the study group earlier, if you have previously in your past purchased a digital version of this and you think, I really wanted the physical version now because these came out later, let me know and I can apply credit back so that you don't lose any money on the deal. So we can always work something like that out. Just send me a note from my website.
Excellent.
Anything
okay,
else?
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for calling. I was really surprised. Well, it's sort of how it works. If you're ever running a business someday, this is how it works, is you have an idea of exactly what you're going to do and it fails miserably. And it's interesting that you get used to this in business. Trying things, does it work? No, it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't work, or it doesn't work the way you were expecting. Sometimes it's a complete failure with what you're doing. But as they say, in business, you can have as many failures as you'd like. The one that works, as long as one thing works, that you find the one thing, you're fine. And that's what you have to do. You just have to keep failing and failing and failing and failing until you get it. My failure in this case was that everybody wants a digital product. Who wants physical? That's silly, because I'm the kind of person who doesn't like a physical product per se. In some cases, I do like physical books, but I sometimes say, I love to have everything digital so I can just take it with me everywhere. I think this comes from the times when I was traveling so much that I didn't want to carry a lot of things with me. I loved having everything digital. I could read books, manuals, documents, all digital. Don't give me a piece of paper. And of course, I'd go to these events. I'd go to a week-long training, and they'd give you like 3-ring binders, like multiple 3-ring binders to bring home. I would leave them in the hotel room. I don't want those. I'm not going to carry those around across the country. Do you have a digital form of this? Well, sure. Well, why did you print it out? I thought everybody wanted digital. I was wrong. Completely wrong. I'm fine with that. So now I found a way to provide both the physical version and the digital version for somebody who gets this. So if you buy the physical, you get both. If you buy the digital, you just get the digital. But if you spend the extra money for the printed, because boy, it costs money to print. It's just the way it is. Paper and color costs cash. So it costs a little more for the printed. So I thought, well, if I'm giving you this printed version, let's give you the digital too. So you're covered. Either way, wherever you are, you can get access to this content, which ultimately is what I want to provide, is a way for you to get what you need to be able to pass these certifications. Let's go to 661 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Hi.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you? What can we do for you?
I'm fine. I'm calling from the Caribbean.
How are you doing, sir, after the big storms have come through?
It was usually, well, my country, it actually passed, so it was very good.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
What can we do for you, sir?
Yeah, I really enjoy looking at the videos, preparing to take the Network Plus December coming.
Okay.
But I'm just a little nervous on the upcoming of it. So I'm just trying to get a little idea on how I should really prepare myself on taking that Network Plus exam.
It is a little more of a challenge, I think. If you've ever taken like the A Plus or even other exams from other companies like Microsoft, the Network Plus is kind of a different animal. It has so many abbreviations, and it's an interesting mix of things that have to be memorized, because you have to memorize these types of connectors, you have to memorize these categories of cables and the speeds of the topologies that run on top of them. You've got all of these very specific details you have to know, But then you also have to know how some of these things are used. Some of the questions we talked about today, that here's a port number, but what would you do with that port number? How is that applied back to things you would do? How do you apply this port number back to ordering a pizza, talking on the telephone? How do you apply this back to receiving an email? That's I think the biggest challenge. There's quite a bit of content in the exam objectives. You should absolutely be using your exam objectives as a checklist. But if you can get as much hands-on as possible, even hands-on that goes a little bit beyond the exam objectives, I think it will help. If you've got a switch in front of you and you can plug in a device to the switch and you can get an idea of how that switch is managed, or go through a wireless access point and start configuring some of the encryption settings, it all flows back to those exam objectives. You can see, oh, there's WPA2. And I can configure the 802.11 inside of this to use the WPA2, and I'll configure a password. To me, that solidifies it. That writes it into my brain a little bit better. That's the more hands-on you can get, the better.
Because sometimes I usually do try using the Cisco packet tracer.
Oh, good. Good. I think the packet tracer is someone who's I've used a lot of packet tracer. I love it because you can build these networks out very quickly. There's obviously a lot of Cisco knowledge you have to be able to connect up switches and routers and do things with that. And most of that goes well beyond the scope of the Network Plus exam. In fact, it goes well beyond. You don't have to know how to configure a Cisco switch, set up VLANs, set up routing tables to be able to pass your Network Plus. But boy, it sure helps a lot if you can do that.
Okay. Because I'm really interested in buying the hard copy of the N10.
And that's something you can, of course, look at doing. Of course, you can take your own notes as well. What I did with these course notes was just write down everything from my videos and every graphic. So you can get a digital version, a printed version, or both of those. Maybe something you might want to think about.
Yeah, I had the soft copy, but I would like to purchase the hard copy one.
Gotcha. Well, if you've already purchased the soft copy, send me a note on my website. Tell me, who you are and when you purchased it. Give me the details there, and then I can send you a coupon that's just for you that would give you a credit back on that, so you're not spending extra money. It's going to cost more money anyway. First, it costs money to print it, and then shipping it international is not inexpensive either. But I'll be more than happy to do that and give you a credit back for what you've already spent.
Sure, no problem. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you calling. Good luck. I'm spilling my coffee everywhere. Not spilling it because it's in my Contigo. I've got this in here. It falls over all over the place when I'm doing one of these events. I don't want to have a problem there with any of that. That's why I use this whenever you're not supposed to have drinks around all of this equipment, and I got a lot of equipment here, and it's not inexpensive equipment. That's when I use these Contigo. They are not a sponsor, but I just love them because you can turn it upside down. It is never dripped. Ever, ever, ever. They're designed to be that. They're designed to be this coffee mug that doesn't drip anywhere. So if that's my little technical tip for everybody, is get a mug that doesn't spill. That's your number one. Question in the chat room about when will this replay be available? And you'll notice that when it used to be able while this was live, you could rewind it. But because I'm using a very short delay between when I do this and when you see it, that delay doesn't allow people to rewind now back. I don't know why. It seems like that's an odd thing to lose by decreasing the latency. I don't know, but that's how it works. I don't have control of that. But one of the advantages of doing this on YouTube is as soon as I finish this and we say, thanks for coming, I hit the stop button, it takes a few minutes for YouTube to process the video, but then it's immediately available. There's practically no delay. So I don't have to upload anything. I don't have to push any buttons. It will automatically become public and available on my website, really on my YouTube channel. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube. And it will be there right there immediately. Well, it's been fun that week that we canceled the study group. We had the tropical storm come through. We lost power almost Sunday morning, immediately when the eye wall hit. What was left of the eye wall hit, and power went off. Completely expected. There was no question we were going to lose power. I have these batteries in each of my cars that is used for, it has jumper cables on it. I don't know if you've seen these before. I should find the name of it just because now I'm talking about it. And it's kind of hard to explain what it is without giving you a specific product name. So in each of my cars, because you ever deal with jumper cables, you have to have two cars and they have to come next to each other. And then we have to turn one car on. It's this, and nobody ever does it right. It's always a problem. So for my cars, I got these, what they call Genius from this company called NOCO, N-O-C-O. Genius Boost Plus is what I got. And it's these jumpers, these lithium batteries with jumper cables on them. So I think I got a picture. Got a picture right here. So here's what they are. So I got a big jumper cable on them, and they got a battery. It's a 1,000 amp 12 volt battery, and you charge it up, you stick it in your car, and it stays there. And if you need to jump somebody, you don't pull your car around. You just grab this little thing, and you plug it into the battery, and then it just jumps it. It's an extra battery. Just kind of, you're attaching it on. You're simply extending the battery that's already in the car. And it gives it just enough juice to start up a truck. So there's plenty of juice here to be able to get things going with multiple attempts. So if they really have a battery problem, it's not something else. But it also has lights on it. It also has USB interfaces on it, that was the great part about these, is that the reason I got them was for storms. So they have USB charging interfaces on them. So this is a 1,000 amp battery that's in here that will charge up, and for at least a few phones, it will charge a few phones to full charge. Think of it as being one of those portable chargers that you carry with you, except it's huge or big enough, and it's great. The price on these, this was like $100. It's $99.95 at Amazon for these. Go to professormesser.com/Amazon for that to help support the site as well. Those will get you going there pretty good. But I've got one in the car, so I grabbed all the stuff from the cars, grabbed them out of the car, brought them in the house, and we at least had power for our devices. That was the long story about how long power was out. Power was out about a day. Did we sleep without power? We may have. It might have come on later in the day. It went off in the early part of the day. Might have been late that day. It was very, very minimal for us. The last storm that came through, it was days before we got power back. This one, I think it was the same day or the day after. You know, we didn't lose what was in our fridge or our freezer. We were in great shape. I had plenty of ice. We'd already planned. We had water and ice and sodas, and we were ready for the worst. But that was good. Not much cool footage from the cameras outside because, as I mentioned, just as the eye wall was hitting, we lost power. So that was that. There was no power and no internet when that happened as well. The power was out and back up very shortly. Internet didn't come back it happened Sunday. We didn't get internet back until late Monday. So a couple days of no internet. But we had planned for that as well. I had books on my tablets, and I had these actual books. I had magazines lined up ready to go. So that worked out fine too, to have that there. But you're right. It's not fun to be without internet for me. And I'm, in the middle of all this. I've got a study group scheduled for Wednesday. We didn't get everything back until late Monday. Tuesday, things were still kind of spotty. It was just not a good time to be on the network. So we decided not to do it and do it now. I think that was probably the best idea to have that there. But even then, not a lot of good footage anyway, because there was just wind. It's just a little bit of wind. No dramatic pictures of trees coming down or, pieces of houses blowing by. That's not what we got here. Where I was, it was just some wind. And no big trees went down. Yeah, no cows. We don't have a cow. The hand of God. Is it the finger of God? What is it? No, nothing huge going on like that here. Thankfully, we were certainly it could have possibly stayed out over water and then come right over the studios. And that would have been bad. we would have gotten a real whopper. But none of that happened. We were just very lucky. Lucky. And I'll take luck all day over any of that. Absolutely. So things are kind of back to normal now. The network's up. Everybody's able to go to work. It's just normal cycle. Everybody's, they're back on their normal schedules. We don't have a problem with that anymore in my particular neck of the woods. So we're in pretty good shape there. So we're continuing now. We had our Security Plus study group last week. We did this one this week. And I'm just heads down doing Security Plus right now, working on the new Security Plus content. For those of you doing Security Plus, a completely different exam. It's probably the most dramatic change to a CompTIA exam that I've ever had to go through. They completely rewrote parts of it. There's huge domains that are just brand new content. And it takes a long time to build that content out. So that's what we're doing right now. And then we'll have the course notes for that will be created. The videos will start being created. So they'll be done, before you know it, and being able to work through that. Any good place to study Network Plus lab environments? Well, yes, I do. In fact, it's the live labs, the net labs, professormesser.com/netlabs will get you there. I think I have some I can even show. I've got the GTS Learning ones up on my screen that I can work through. Where are they? Is this the online learning? That's not what I wanted. Is it? Yes. No. Sort of. I'm getting there. Nope, I'm in the wrong place. I thought I had some I could go through. I might have told you wrong. We're going to find out. GTS Learning has these great labs that are virtualized lab environments. It's quite remarkable, actually, because they built all of these different network configurations. They built all of these different configurations for, there's Network Plus. That's the 005. Where's my 006? Right there. So I'll show you in a moment. Here's the live labs there. So this is the Network Plus live labs. These are all the labs down the left side of the screen. It's kind of hard to see, but you've got all of these different labs you can go through. So software as a service, VPN servers, internet connectivity, how IPsec works. Let's do how IPsec works. And when you bring this up, it says, okay, let's start this lab. And it builds out a whole network for you. This is the network. So you got a domain server. You've got, looks like two servers up here and 3 devices down here. Two running Windows 8, 1 running Windows 7. And then it starts, you can go through and start powering these virtual devices on. Power that one on, power this one on, power this one on. So they're booting up. These aren't systems that are made for, these aren't systems where you have to go in a linear line to finish this. They're actual Windows systems. You don't even have to follow the lab if you don't want to. I've got these, a description of these right here. Here they are. These are the ones when you've probably seen me talk about these before. These are the professormesser.com/netlabs. And if you follow that NetLabs link, it's a special price over on GTS Learning. So instead of paying $169, you pay $109. If you use that link, professormesser.com/netlabs, and then you don't need any special links. Yeah, and there's a link on professormesser.com/live as well. But when you get here and it starts up, here's Windows starting. There's one of the Windows 8 devices that I was on right here. See, it's a normal Windows device. And I mean, you can use this like you would any other Windows device. There's no difference here. So if you wanted to go to the desktop, I click the desktop. There we are. You want to run File Manager, we'll start up the File Manager. It's very fast. You've just got a remote desktop in from your browser. There's no extra software to go to. You can even scroll up. All the other devices, if you scroll up and down, are on here too. So you can choose, there's the other Windows 8 device. Here's the domain controller. If you ever want to play around with the domain controller, there it is. Now you've got a domain controller you can play around with. There's your server manager, pops up. You can run through some of the server options, set up configurations. On this one, you can go to your PowerShell, work through PowerShell settings, maybe run some scripts. It's all here. So that's one that is available on the GTS Learning website. Go to professormesser.com/netlabs, and you can work through those. It's pretty interesting stuff too. I often will go here to create a screenshot of something that I didn't want to build out myself and have that there. It's and it's fun because now I can mess around in here. And like I said, I don't even have to follow the lab. I can go through this and do anything in Windows. Here's the Windows information. This is my task manager. Let's just start going through the tasks and let's just start nuking things. There's Active Directory in the task, and you'll break it and it'll mess up. And then all you have to do is restart the whole thing, reset it. It'll go back to where it was. So you got to, you can't mess anything up on your computer. You aren't changing the settings on your network. You're not messing with the configurations on your machine. You're messing with their machine. And then you don't have to worry about breaking anything when it's set up that way. It's really brilliant in the way they've got that there. So that's the professormesser.com/netlabs that's available. It's a lot of fun to play around with. And they got so many of the Network Plus labs that are in there. I mentioned earlier in a call that I said you really need to get as much hands-on as you can. And that's what I was talking about, is whether you build it yourself or use somebody else's labs, I don't care. You should just do whatever works for you. That is the most comfortable thing for you to do. However you do it, that's your party. You just need to figure out a way to make that happen, to have those all there. There is, the best place to get it. There's also links on my website underneath Network Plus and A Plus and Security Plus. There's a link for my recommended products. I love this product, so I recommend it. So it's in that recommended settings or recommended products list for those as well that take you right there. And it should certainly be there. It's kind of the challenge. We were talking about this in the chat room because we were just talking about the hurricanes coming through. And I was, of course, concerned about making sure all of my data was safe. I had backups that were taken. I do a lot more now with backing things up, things that are in the cloud. I have a different process in place now that I have a lot more cloud-based storage and having that there. So making sure that all of that was in the cloud was something I could be comfortable with. That way, if the house blew away, and you have to think about those things, if you lose the roof and all of this is destroyed and none of these things are here anymore, where's my data? Because I can't spend months again now rebuilding everything of my data. I can replace everything that's in here. I can replace that screen and that computer and this mixer and this laptop easily. You make a phone call and they'll send you hardware. They're happy to do it, as it turns out. But I can't replace the data. I can't go back. All the work that I've been doing on Security Plus that nobody has seen yet. I'm creating the entire course before anybody ever sees it. So I have a huge amount of content that has literally taken months to write, months of me sitting in this dark room from early in the morning to late at night. So now, where is that data? What happens if something goes through? So from a security perspective, I'm thinking about that. How do I protect all of that? How do I make sure that I have a way to get back up and running again should something happen? So that's one of those that's important. I could have built it underground. Certainly that could have been an option. I just didn't want to be underground all day. You don't see it here, but when this is over, in front of me is a big set of windows. So I open all this up. There's a ton of natural light. It's a beautiful view. It's the studio. I built the studio to do it this way. This was all built specifically to do this. So, but it's also set up so that when I do an event, I shoot video, all of the light is very specifically lit in a very specific place. You can't see it, but I'm able to move these around very easily in here through the setup and configuration I have on the ceiling. It's very flexible, and I can just close up all of the curtains. I have curtains around everything, so no light comes in. So this is a perfect environment for shooting because it's exactly the same every time. There's no extra light from here. There's no extra sound from there. It's exactly the same every single time. So I don't have to do very much. I just sit here and we're ready to go. Did I study lighting? There's nowhere. There are places you can go to study lighting, but you're getting a degree in movie making, and that's not what I got. It's all trial and error. It's all trying to figure out what type of lighting would work best for you. It's trying things, having them not work, having them work poorly, trying other things. The one truth I will tell you about lighting is if you're getting the lighting done and you're pretty happy with the price, you're doing it wrong. because lighting is so expensive. It costs so much money for lights, so much money. But the lights that I have in here are perfectly sized. They're probably even oversized for what I'm doing. But when I built this, I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to lay out and do different things in the studio. You can't see them in this picture. There's 2 lights in front of me, and there's 2 lights to the side. The lights in front of me are obviously lighting me from above the camera. That's my direct light. You can kind of see it in my glasses. There's the lights. See? There they are. And the light on this side is kind of catching the side of me and kind of filling in a little bit of the shadows. Behind me are lights. You can't see these either, but they're lighting the background. So the lights that are on me are not lighting the background. All of this, by the way, is something that's accessible from my screen. So I can turn on and off the lights through a power system that is IP addressable. So if I want to turn off the backlights, since we have time here, we don't have any calls waiting, so I'm just going to do this. This is kind of fun. I'm going to turn off the backlights. So what's lighting my background right now, which is a real background. People say, is that a green screen? No, it's not a green screen. So there, the backlights are off. So in here, this looks kind of the same because it's the lights that are in front of me, but the backlights now are off. You can see what a difference. I have these 2 very relatively small LED lights to do the background. If I turned off the front, click, turn off immediately, next, and apply that there. So normally when I'm in here, this is what it's like. Oh, it's so nice. I might just do a study group like this because it's so nice without all this. I don't have quite as many lights in front of me. The spinning lights people are asking in the chat that are down here to my right that look like Cylons or something, those are video recording devices. So they're taking 2 different video streams. They're taking the one you're seeing, and they're taking what is in my preview mode, which is, you can't see them very well, but I have 2 smaller screens underneath my monitor. And those smaller screens are showing me what you're seeing, and they're showing me, if I push a button, what you will see. That's a preview and a program. This is you always see the program, but I also see the preview. Well, I'm recording both of those. That way, if I mess up something, and I think later, oh, I shouldn't have shown you guys that, or I need to edit it out, I've got the preview that I can edit into it. Technically, that's what I use for recording my courses. I set it up so that when I'm recording both the camera and I'm recording the screen at the same time. So when I'm doing this, it's basically what we're doing right now. As I'm talking to my camera, I've got the keynote that's up, very similar to what you were seeing here, but what the keynote is being recorded onto one of those recording devices, and my camera is being recorded onto the other one. That way, I'm able to take both of those, I edit them together, I make a video, and that's what you see. So when I shoot the video, the headshot that's on the screen, the talking head, I call it, that's on the screen in the corner, isn't there at all. I edit that in, I put it on the screen, I shrink it down, I crop it off, I sometimes fix the colors that are in there. There's a lot of editing that goes through, but once you've kind of got the template, then I can just load them up and copy the template across every time. It goes very, very fast when you work through there. Really, it's the recording part. It's very, very, very easy to make that happen. That part is the easiest part, is sitting in front of the camera and explaining to you the things that I happen to have on the screen. That's really the part that has taken time to figure out, but now that you got it, it goes very fast. It's writing the content that takes the longest amount of time, because I want to write content for you that makes sense, that has a story. Why are you learning this? You know, we talked today about one of these topics. Why are you learning Category 6? Why are you learning far-in crosstalk? Well, there's a whole thing with dealing with the crosstalk between these and what it looks like when it gets to the other side, how the other device can hear it. You know, that number that you get, here's the decibel crosstalk number. What does that mean to me as a networking professional? So I want to put those things in there. And so it takes time to put those in there so there's a story about why you're learning this. That is the thing that I see over and over and over again, are people asking, why do I have to know this thing? There's a reason for it. Everything that's in Network Plus, As I mentioned before, I think every topic I have touched or had some dealing with in my career. So there is a reason, but you don't know yet because you've never worked with those. But I know, and I can tell you why. And I want to be sure I do more of that to get that to you and make sure those go through those pieces. Anyway, so that's a little inside baseball, a little behind the scenes for you. So you can see that whenever I'm setting up these during the day, all of this is sort of ready to go. You know, I move some screens back and put my TriCaster controls that aren't here all the time. Usually I remove the TriCaster controls when we're done. They sit behind me, and then I move the screen real close to me so I can work closely with that. You know, a lot of the TriCaster stuff, there's a TriCaster control that's to my left that you normally don't see. That's it. In fact, you could probably see it if I showed it to you. I have the ability. Let's show you. I can change what video you see. So right now you're seeing the bird cam and camera 2. So I'm going to change camera 2. Normally I see this. So that's what I see. So whenever I'm working with the TriCaster and working through these pieces, that's the controls. So you can see there's sort of an inception thing going on the right side because that's what you see. You're seeing a copy of a copy of a copy. But then there's this preview, the talking head of me that you kind of see in the center of the screen there. That's what, if I pushed a button, you would see next. So that's how I get to see these things. Now, that view that you're seeing on the screen is in front of me. Now I can't even show you that piece, but that is what is in front of me. I can too. I can do this. Camera 2 goes back to bird cam. So in front of me, you can't see, is a big television that's up here. That's what I use normally when I'm in the Xbox. And I move it, it's on wheels, so I move it around behind me so it's comfortable. But when I'm doing one of these live streams, it gets rolled around, and that screen you just saw is up there. There is the same screen is also on a little monitor here in case I have problems and I can't see that one. That's there. Normally that big monitor is not in front of me, so that's what I use commonly. I've got other systems here. You can't even see on the right side. There's a Linux box underneath this. That's actually a dual boot box, Linux and Windows, that I'm using as a sort of a model office or a testing environment. ProfessorMesser.com lives in this cabinet in a test world that you never touch. But whenever I need to do software updates or I need to manage changes, I need to update this WordPress. Is it going to break anything? Let's run it in here at the studio first, make sure that works properly, and then I can roll it out to my live servers. So uptime is very big with me. I want you to always have access to the videos. I want you to have always access to the things you need. If you need to log in and download the products that you purchased, it always needs to be available. So I've kind of built those so that you have access to those pieces. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but really there's a purpose for everything. There's nothing that is not supposed to be here. Very well honed at this point of getting all these pieces here and making sure they can all work. One of these days for Network Plus, what I really should do is write up how all the networking for this works, because the audio that you're hearing is going through a network. It's all IP based. It's all really sort of a Linux-based system that's running on this mixer to my left. It's all a packetized voice mixing system. I've also got a separate network for the bird cameras you see. There's a separate network for other video content, separate network for storing large files, because some of these videos, when we're done, the video from today is a couple gig. Just for the video. Actually, maybe more than that. But I never take it off. It's recording. The Cylon down here is recording the SSD. These are two 1 terabyte SSDs. So whenever I'm editing, I never copy it off of those SSDs. I edit from the SSD because it's connected to my computer through Thunderbolt. So I have a very high speed already. Probably in this case, it's early Thunderbolt. I think it's just a 10 gig connection, but it's plenty fast for video editing. So I do all my video editing directly from this device and the SSDs. I actually plug it into an SSD reader, but it's very fast and I don't have to copy those files around. So it's all about optimizing time. I spend my time as little as possible on some of the smaller details. I try to have a nice flow And as soon as you get the workflow done and you're able to tweak it and optimize it, that part goes very well. Now, if I could just get a workflow that would allow me to write content faster, there, we're done. So if I had to replace everything, how much would it cost? It would cost quite a bit. It would cost a lot. Makes me sad to think how much that would cost. I'm not sure really, but you can pretty much count up some of these things. I mean, a TriCaster is between $10 to $20,000 depending on the model. The audio is another $5,000. The screens that are in front of me, I also use an iMac that's in front of me. That's another few $1,000s. There's a laptop next to me. It's a few $1,000s. There's screens in front of me that are $1,000. So it adds up quick, but it's a business. As I mentioned earlier in the study group, you're building out and putting all of this equipment in place with the plans that you'll be able to make a return on that investment. So I would not be able to create the quality of videos that we have, the speed at which I was able to create them, the content type that I was able to create without having all of these things in place. So we decided we're gonna bite the bullet. We're gonna find the money. We're gonna somehow make this work, and then we're gonna see if it works. So that's the challenge with anyone who's going into business. You don't know if it's going to work. You have no idea. Now, to be fair, this is sort of the end game. Okay. I don't know if I can go, I could go much farther. We could go to 4K in here, which is a whole nother stage to go with. But when we started, they weren't these cold running LED light panels that were in front of me. They were 1,000 watt garage lights in a small non-air conditioned room. And we had to shoot 15 minutes at a time because it would get so hot we couldn't stand it anymore. So we'd open the doors and cool it off, and then we closed the doors back up again because there were kids in the house and it was loud. And we would shoot another 15 minutes, and then we'd turn the lights off and cool out. And we were shooting to tape. We were not shooting to digital. There was no digital camera. There was no HD at the time to be able to do that. So we were shooting to SD. I still have the camera. SD, 8mm SD analog. And then once we shot it to that, I would plug the camera in, and through FireWire, it was a FireWire connected camera. Most of them were at that time that were doing that. It was like a consumer camera. And you hit play on the camera, you hit record on your computer. So if you shot for an hour, you would hit play and you'd have to walk away for an hour while it was effectively playing and digitizing everything as it was being captured by the computer. And at that point, I finally got something I could edit, and we would go through the editing process, and it was only SD. It was only plain standard definition. So we evolved from there. We took and got HD cameras. It was digital, so I could record directly. I was recording to media that was in the camera. I could just pop out the media, stick it in my computer, and edit from there. It was an annoying process, but that's all we had at the time. There were no cameras that recorded digitally. So it was this whole, and there was no YouTube. I was putting everything on blip.tv. Is Blip even around anymore? Blip.tv is where we started, and Blip.tv went away. Looks like Maker.tv got the URL, but Blip as a video content, a video provider, they were at the time, they were the thing. There was no YouTube. They were an early version of YouTube. And so we were doing everything on Blip. I got about 1 million views on Blip over a very long time, but we got about 1 million views. So we were there quite some time. We moved over to Vimeo for a little bit. And then for some reason, Vimeo had this big controversy. This was years and years and years ago. With a big controversy that said you can't use Vimeo to, I forget exactly what it was. You can't use Vimeo as a way just to play videos from your website. Like, isn't that what it is? Isn't that what you are? Like, somehow they had messed up their legalese to say something they didn't want it to say. And even though that wasn't what they wanted it to say, they didn't change it. And so I ended up going to YouTube. YouTube at the time did not have HD. Vimeo did. So I went to YouTube, and YouTube had just started doing HD content. You believe that? Back in the day. And then finally they got HD. And really the second I moved over to YouTube, that's where everybody was going. And by everybody, you don't care where content creators are going. I'm caring where you are. Where are you? How can I get the information to you? And that was one of the best things we did, was go to YouTube, make that work. So it was good. It was a good move, and it has worked out so far. YouTube has changed a lot through the years. My content's changed a lot through the years. My business model's changed a lot through the years. It's one of the natures of doing this is it never, it stays the same. It's always different. Are there any recommendations besides my content? If you go to my website under the A+ menu listing, there's a list of what I recommend. So it's one of those things. You can find all of the different books, other labs, other things, some of my products, they're all there. You can see what I use. And these are the ones I use, or I know the people that created them. I just don't stick stuff on my website. I don't just put, hey, here's a bunch of Amazon links, click these. That doesn't help anyone. You can go click Amazon links yourself. I want things that I've met with the folks, I've worked with them, I've known them for years. If there's, you run into problems, sometimes you run into problems. Something doesn't get shipped right. Something isn't working on the download. Something isn't working with access. I want, if I call somebody and say, here's a problem I'm running into, they're on it. They fix it immediately. And these are the folks I work with. So if I wouldn't recommend somebody who I didn't believe was doing a good job, they've got to do a good job for me to put them on my website and support what they're doing and have that there. Kind of mouse and keyboard I use. Well, this is not a simple question, actually. The keyboard I use is not the one I want, but it's exactly the one I want. I know that doesn't make sense. I use a Microsoft ergonomic keyboard. I think the wired version of this, so I think it's a Microsoft 4000. If I was to pick up the keyboard, I've got a lot of wires going here. Pick up the keyboard. This is a Microsoft. You see what I'm doing for you folks? Microsoft Natural Ergonomic Keyboard 4000 version 1.0. Now this is I love keyboards. I love a mechanical keyboard. This is not a mechanical keyboard. It's a mushy, relatively inexpensive, plasticky, bubbly keyboard. But it is the best ergonomic keyboard in the market. It's not the best keyboard on the market, but it's the best ergonomic keyboard on the market. It's split keyboard. You can't really see it very well from there, but it's got split keys. So your right hand is this way and your left hand's pointing the other way, but it's not straight. Your hands are off to the side. I spend a lot of time here. I'm an old guy. I have, joints that I'm now having to worry about because I type constantly all day, every day. I used to have a little bit larger mouse, but you'll notice my mouse now is enormous. Let me see if I can get a picture in front of me. So this is my mouse. It's huge. It's a wired mouse. Again, I do most things wired. It looks like it's big. This is my hand. It's not like it's close to the screen and you're seeing an oversized picture like it's a problem with perception. It's not. Like this is technically called, this is built by Hippus NV from the Netherlands, and it's the hand shoe mouse. Literally hand shoe mouse, because I'll see if you can see it in the other picture here. Your hand sits on the whole mouse. So when I move my mouse around the screen, I'm literally moving my whole hand. My hand's not around the mouse. Most of the time when you're using a mouse, I have these big, I call them brain surgeon hands. They're just enormous hands. And a mouse is this here. I do have a tiny little, I have a regular Microsoft mouse, and it just overwhelms. That's a big Microsoft mouse. That's the biggest one that Microsoft makes. It's their, this is Logitech Performance MX, one of the biggest mice that Logitech makes. And you can see, like, my hands, they're wrapping around the mouse. So when I use it, it's in this claw form to be able to use it. We'll try doing that for a couple hours. Holy cow. My hand, it can't handle it at the end of the day. So I have moved away from the traditional mouse, and I've gone to something where my whole hand, can't even see it very well because of the wire that's there, but my whole hand sits on the mouse. You can kind of see the mouse on top of it. Now my whole hand just sits there, and it's supported on the back. You know, I can't even hold it because it's not designed to be held. But how relaxing. Handshoemouse.com from Hippus. It is so relaxing to be able to use this. There's no stress whatsoever. If you're somebody who has to deal with, and unfortunately it's just where I am because of what I do for a living, is I have to be very, very careful about how much I'm doing with my hands because they'll hurt at the end of the day from doing all of this. And I have to think about getting these. And this is the best thing to be able to do this. This is a large, I think. They have different sizes. I think mine is a large. It's hard to tell. I've got a part number. No. Oh, the part model number here. Mine is an L2WB Lima 2 Whiskey Bravo. And it's a great mouse. All I need is a mouse that can point. I don't do a lot of gaming on my computer. I could, I guess. It's not a great gaming mouse because it's not designed to be quick and move around with it. You're using your whole arm. If you're gaming with it, you'd be using your arm. You're very moving it around like that. So it's not designed for Diablo 3. You know, it doesn't work very well for Diablo 3. I have to get a different mouse for that. But I do. That's why I do everything on the Xbox these days. It seems, or I'm doing something like World of Warcraft that doesn't require a lot of clicking fast. You know, that's a whole problem to be able to do that. So I try to get away from doing a lot of that on the screen. And most of the time I'm sitting here during the day anyway. So I would like to, with a couple of hours at the end of the day, get away from these screens and go to kind of a different environment. And the Xbox is the one there for me at the moment. And now that Destiny 2 is out, loving it. Loving it. I'm one of these, I'm the problem child of gaming though, because I get maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week, and a couple hours at the end of the day. And that's it. I am the casualist of casual gamers. So I never get really good at anything. I get good enough to get through it. Kind of that kind of thing. So that's one of those. I don't tend to give out my gamer tag just because it's not one where that's not a thing. I don't. You folks are very nice. I like talking to you on the live streams. Kind of like to be by myself at the end of the day of doing that kind of thing. There is a group I'm a part of that I kind of follow along. I'm not very active in it, but it's just a bunch of dads that are gamers, a bunch of old guys that have bad reflexes. That's who I like to hang out with. My people. That's what I like to hang out with because they are just as bad as gaming as I am. And that works out well for me. And we can talk about while we're not talking about gaming, we're talking about scotch and cigars. So that's kind of how it works. Works out perfect to have that there. And great jokes, dad jokes galore to have that there. All works out that way. All right. Well, we've gone through another hour of whatever this nonsense is in the after show, but that's the way the after show is. Sometimes it's calls for the entire hour. Sometimes it's me talking about whatever it happens to be. Sometimes it's questions about gaming from the chat room. Maybe we're looking at hardware that we have here. You never know. It's always different. And that's what I like about it. Next week is we reset. It's the beginning of October. We have next Wednesday is the A+ study group. A week after that, we're back to Network Plus. So if you like this one, join us in 2 weeks for another Network Plus study group. And then we got a Security Plus study group after that. Works out so well to be able to have that there. There is plenty to do in the meantime. You can always contact me at any time. From the top of my website is a contact us link. You're welcome to send me a note at any time. Hopefully I'm able to get back with you. I try to get back to everyone. It doesn't always happen. I try to get back to everybody with their continuing education unit requests in about a week. Sometimes it takes a little longer to have that there, but we try to do the best we can and be able to have that there. I want to thank you for joining me, though. I would not be able to do these study groups without your input, without your questions, without your answers. It'd be no good if I just asked a question and then there was two people. We got 50% on one answer and 50% on the other. That's not what we're shooting for. We want to have a good time with this, and I think we have. I want to thank you for joining us. Wouldn't be able to do it without you. We'll see you in another week for A+. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the next Network Plus. Thanks for joining us on this one. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group.